This is Support is Sexy, episode 486, with intuitive and abundance coach, Benir Pierre. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm happy to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And if you are listening to this in real time, happy Monday. This is a good episode to start off your week. We're talking about money, abundance, our relationship with money, how you can be woo-woo and still want money. I love that part of the conversation. We are talking to intuitive and abundance coach, Benir Pierre. And in addition to talking about money, how to get what you want, what you deserve, what you are, actually not what you're worth, because no one can pay you what you're worth, as we talk about in this episode. But what I also love is Benir talks about stepping into your power, what that looks like, what that feels like, how she did it, and how important it is for all of us. And you know, if you are a woman entrepreneur who is looking to step into your light, to share your story, and you're thinking of a way for you to do that, you must consider podcast guesting. And don't worry, if you haven't done it before, just download my free guide on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest at girlonpodcastgift.com. That's girlonpodcastgift.com. Learn how to be an unforgettable podcast guest for all the right reasons. Now, as I mentioned on this episode, I love that Benir talks to us about stepping into the light. She also talks about how to find your ideal client, getting over the blocks around pricing, which a lot of us have, right? I know I have moments where thinking about pricing, got a little hang up there, got a few blocks there, got to push through it. Benir also talks about how to breathe through your anxiety and how to wisely make the transition from full-time work to entrepreneurship. So again, if you're listening to this, well, whenever you're listening, it's a great episode for you to listen to, right? But if it's the beginning of the week, this is a good one to start it off with. So now, without further ado, Benir Pierre. So Benir, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
I feel like I must have been born an entrepreneur, honestly. My first business, I taught myself to braid hair when I was about 11. And then people really loved my work. So by 15, I was charging for it. And since then, I've always had some type of business on the side.
Did you see entrepreneurship around you? Like, was your family entrepreneurs, or what was it that made you think, I'm going to braid hair and then charge for it?
You know, honestly, I did not grow up with any entrepreneurs around me. My mom definitely was a very high achieving woman, and she always kind of taught me just that anything was possible, but I've always loved money.
Nothing wrong with that.
So, you know, babysitting. So actually, I was wrong. I babysat before I started braiding hair, but, you know, babysitting wasn't quite cutting it. And I was always looking for ways to create my own income.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, it sounds like independence was important to you too, like
Absolutely.
making your own money.
Absolutely.
Now, where did you grow up? Where were you doing all this hair braiding and babysitting?
I grew up in Seattle, Washington.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Are you still there now?
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
I am now in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, okay. You're down here with me. I'm in Atlanta too.
Yes, ma'am.
So what was a young Benir like, other than obviously entrepreneurial?
Yes, very ambitious. But contrary to what most people would believe, I was super duper religious. At that time, I was a little Kojic girl, jean skirts to my ankles, very quiet, very timid. There were people around me who thought that I didn't even speak because I was so quiet. And
Mm.
then went to college and started fully showing up, and now they can't get me to shut up.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Howard.
Oh, okay. I went to Hampton.
Yay!
Yeah. So what was it that you
Rivals,
think
honey.
rivals? I know rivals. What do you think made you sort of come out of your shell, if you will, when you got to other than it being Howard? That seems to do that to people. But what do you think made you come out of your shell? Do you think it was being outside of Seattle and what you were used to? Do you think you were always waiting to sort of show up, as you said?
I definitely think I was always waiting to show up. And not that I necessarily needed permission, but I think I did. I
Or
always
space?
definitely space.
Hmm.
I think, before, of course, I was a granny's baby, so I was always with my grandmother, and I kind of had to fit into that box. And going out to Washington, D.C., nobody knew me, and I really had an opportunity to, I was going to say redefine myself, but in many ways, I think I was finding myself and defining myself for the first time.
Mm.
And I realized that I'm not quite as timid and, as shy as I thought I was. I'm definitely an introvert, but I was really able to find my voice and discover just how powerful I really am. That was around the time I started performing as well. And so I do spoken word. And so having to step out on stage in front of all these people and own my space really was a catalyst for most of what I do now.
So, what was it like the first time you stepped on stage?
Ooh, honey.
Mhm.
It was during Howard Homecoming, and I did a poem in the gospel show. And everyone said that I did very well. I felt good doing it, but the whole time my leg was shaking like crazy. I was scared to walk. And, when I'm on stage, I tend to do a lot of blocking and moving about the stage. But I was so scared to walk because I thought I was going to fall flat on my face. And to be honest, even now, every speaking engagement I have, my left leg is still shaking.
Right, from nervousness.
Absolutely.
I
But,
always tell
we
people
get
that
it
means
done.
that, yeah, and I always tell people that means that you really care about what you're doing. Some people say, I'm trying
Mhm.
not to be nervous. It's like, well, nervous is okay. That's courage. You're showing up, you're still doing it, even though you may be afraid.
Absolutely. And one thing I learned was that if you breathe through it, because a lot of times anxiety really is just blocked energy. And so
Hmm.
if you breathe through it and allow that energy to overtake you, then really it shows up as power and you commanding the stage. I think a lot of times we judge that energy as fear and anxiety when really it's just raw energy that can be used for creation.
So tell us what you mean when you say breathe through it. I love that.
Mhm.
So, what would you do in that example?
So I literally breathe, in 5 breaths and or in for 5 seconds, out for 5 seconds. But as I'm doing that, I imagine that energy wherever I'm feeling it in my body. I imagine it as light. And as I'm breathing, I imagine that that light is filling my body. So it's no longer stuck in my left leg. Now it's in my belly and in my chest and in my throat chakra. And once I can get it up to my throat chakra, then it's definitely going to come out as a powerful voice for me.
So, it's like transforming the energy.
Absolutely.
Love that. So, now at what point did you decide that you wanted to, well, I should say, it's almost like getting back to your roots, but become an entrepreneur?
To be honest, I don't know if I ever decided. I think spirit decided for me.
Hmm.
I worked in financial planning for about 15 years. And while I loved what I did, I think it was more my ego that loved what I did. I had a really great job, really nice title, really beautiful office with a good view. But I wasn't happy. My soul wasn't happy.
Now, did you study that in school? Finance
Actually
and
not. I went to school for social psychology, but I started interning at 15 at Bank of America. And so I always worked
okay.
in finance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was working at this time at an investment company in Portland, Oregon. And again, while I loved what I did, I felt that it was soulless. I've always had a heart. I went to school for social psychology with the intention of becoming a social worker. I didn't know at the time that I was an empath. So I was a little too sensitive for that line of work, but it was always in my heart to serve. And so working in investments, I felt like I really was just going to work to help rich people get richer. And, that was everything from our clients who were already wealthy and we simply were helping them expand that, to the agents who got paid commission from working specifically with wealthy people. And I felt like the people who really needed the help were being lost. And so initially, when I started coaching, it was my intention to do personal finance coaching, which I did for a few years, but I kept attracting people who had dreams so much bigger than who they were. And while money was the block for them, there were so many other things they wanted to do. And so over time, as I started to really implement my spiritual gifts with that and bring in some of that social psychology education, it now has transformed into this amazing baby that is a mix of money mindset and really helping entrepreneurs step into their greatest self through their business, but also helping people lean into their own spiritual gifts so that they can not hustle so much and get more into the flow.
So, did you leave your career in finance and investing and that you had for 15 years, like you said, and then move full time into doing this for your business? What did
After a
that
few,
look like?
after a few years. So, I definitely, there are some folks who just take the jump. They hear what God says and they're like, yes, I'm going to do it. I did that eventually, but for
Mm-hmm.
a long time I was like, okay, God, that's cute. But these bills though.
Right. Help me set this up.
Correct. And so I actually worked in the background for about 4 or 5 years, coaching and still working full time.
Mm-hmm.
But when I moved down to Atlanta, God spoke that it was time for me to leave investments. And for about a year of that, I fought tooth and nail. And, it's so funny because one thing that I teach is manifestation and the importance of aligning your action with your intention. So I had the intention of going full time in my business. And so at that time, I was led to really start applying for positions in service industries and wellness industries where I'm getting back into heart-centered work. But of course, that wasn't my experience. So I'm looking at this pay cut and I'm like, yeah, but God, these
What is this?
bills.
Right.
And
But
so,
God, these bills is so real.
honey. And so, he set it up in such a way that I was able to work in a different industry, but still was working in finance. I was working in accounting at that time. But it gave me the freedom and time freedom specifically to really focus my energy on business building. And so I made the absolute best use of the year and a half that I was there and got my business off the ground. And so I actually went full time last spring.
Excellent. Congratulations. That's a
Thank you.
big step. And thank you for sharing that. I'm starting to make it, I'm usually just curious about that anyway, the transition for women who start their own businesses, because it looks
Mhm,
different for everyone. But
mhm,
I'm starting to try to remind myself to make it a practice to ask all the women on the show, because we all come on to talk about our wonderful businesses and what we've created. But just for the women listening to hear that it can look, that transition can look a lot
mhm.
of different ways, right? Like you said, it doesn't have to be God spoke to me and I jumped ship and did it. And some people
Yeah.
do that and that works. Maybe that is it, but it's not the same for everyone. So thank you for sharing how you did it.
Absolutely. And one thing I had to learn, because even when I decided to jump ship, again, that was really spirit nudging, like, it's time. You got to go now.
Mm-hmm.
But I still was terrified. I still didn't see how things would line up. But I really had to get to the point where I was confident simply stepping out on that very first step and knowing that the rest of the steps would be revealed. But one thing that helped build that confidence, I believe that it was by Regina. I can't remember her last name, but she said that if you're nervous about just jumping out there, either saving up 6 months worth of bills or having 6 months of consistent income in your business, that a lot of times will give you the confidence to know that you can repeat it. So whenever someone
Mm.
comes to me and says, "Oh, I'm going to quit my job because I have this great idea," I tell them to at least wait until they have the 6 months consistent income or they've saved it up so that you have some type of buffer, because that first year, I'd been coaching at this point for about 6 years before I went full time.
Hmm.
And that first year still was crazy. So I definitely do not encourage you to just jump out there without a plan or without something in place.
So good, Benir. That's such great advice. And I'd heard of people say about 6 months of expenses or bills and that kind of thing, but I hadn't heard the idea of 6 months of consistent income in your business. That's smart
Mhm.
too. Like either or both would be
Right.
fantastic, right? But just
Absolutely.
this idea of, yeah, that's great to think about. I think especially, I'm sure for everyone, but since we're talking to women here, especially for women, just that security of knowing that you have that there while you, and it's not even, sometimes we think if the business fails, of course that's a possibility, but even that peace of mind, don't you think, like
Mhm.
the same way
Mhm.
with keeping a job until, because that first year of business, at least for everyone I spoke to and certainly for me, you think it's going to be one way, you're figuring things out, you're pivoting, you're changing things, it takes a minute to catch on.
Absolutely. And one thing that it did for me, again, I like money.
Mm-hmm, right.
And I like knowing that there's money there. And so, because I had been doing it so long, as soon as I went full time, I was able to implement some of the things I'd been planning. And so I really didn't have to touch those 6 months, but it took away the desperation
Right.
of having to work for money, because I already knew that I had a cushion. And when we chase desperate dollars, they run from us. But so many people go into business, and because they have to work for the money, they're looking at clients as dollar signs and they're not available to fully serve. So having that cushion allows you to really just show up and serve and not have to wonder, "Oh, Elayne, thank you so much for paying my mortgage this month."
Right. And then, because if
Yeah,
you lose that client, you're
absolutely.
terrified to, and also I think, to your point, it makes you, with the desperation, even sometimes choose clients that aren't the best for
Mhm.
you, never mind whether or not they pay you.
That's right.
Hmm. Yep. I've
Absolutely
been
right.
there. Like, oh my gosh, I'm taking this person on. This is not the right person. Just don't even do it to yourself.
And I refuse to work with clients that, well, I now refuse. Let me correct
Hmm.
that because
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
definitely was there before where anyone who wanted to work with me, sure, yes, you can work with me.
Right.
But now I'm crystal clear about who I work with, and I refuse to work with a client who will drain my energy. To me, I might as well go back to a full time job for that.
Right, exactly. That's the beauty. That's why I tell when people ask about what's great about entrepreneurship, what do you love so much about it? Is it great not having a boss? And I say, in a way, it's not that you have bosses. You still have people, though, that you're working with. So they're sort of like your bosses, your clients, but you get to choose. You're not stuck with this person. You get to choose who that person is.
Absolutely.
So, what would you say, or how would you say your business is set up now? Do you work with individual clients for coaching? Do you work with companies and organizations, or what is the flow like for you?
So I work with entrepreneurs, and so technically small businesses. And I actually am also working on transitioning into a bit more corporate work as well. But most of my clients are entrepreneurs. In the beginning, it definitely was a lot more individuals, but I realized that for me, I love being that secret weapon that stands behind powerful women and helps push them forward towards their dream. And so small businesses help serve that most for me.
So, in what ways do you help them as an intuitive coach? Because that's what you are, right? An intuitive
Mhm.
coach. What does that mean?
Yes. So, intuitive coach slash profit strategist. On the intuitive coaching side, really it's so I work with the woo woo folks. And what
Hmm.
that means, it's people who are doing purpose driven, heart centered work. They are aware of some of their spiritual gifts. Whether or not they're using them is a whole different story. But they know that they were called for a greater purpose. And so on the intuitive side, I really help them learn to use their intuition in business. So many times we're given this cookie cutter model, and for those of us who are free thinkers, we don't really fit inside of the box. And so I help them learn how to lean into what spirit is telling them instead of trying to follow this step-by-step plan that may or may not work for them. Part of that also is that in the coaching, and as I'm working through the profit strategy side, which really is helping them align their business model so that it's profitable, because I work mostly with coaches, consultants, and creatives, I find that a lot of them are doing a lot of one-on-one work, but they don't really have passive streams of income. They don't have too many recurring streams of income. And so I help them create new packages, programs, products. But a lot of that process is also intuitive. We figure out who their ideal client is, what their ideal client needs, and kind of work backwards from there. And so, I've worked with many coaches before, and normally there's, a specific template they use. And while I definitely do have guidelines for my program creation, my work is more centered on, we do a lot of meditation, we do a lot of crystal work, but it really is centered on helping them listen to their inner voice.
So
and I believe, sorry, go ahead.
No, you believe?
I was just going to say, I believe that when you really lean into your intuition, that sets you up to be an industry leader, because you're not trying to follow the crowd. You are creating trends.
Right. Now, what are some of the mindset blocks that hold many of us back from living a life of abundance? Because I know abundance plays a role in what you help lead women to as well.
Absolutely. And, to be honest, that's the very first place we start, is examining what those blocks are for them. I would say so there's a few things. The first is definitely the belief that we don't deserve it. Many of my clients are first generation entrepreneurs. So they've never seen anyone in their family do what they're doing, and often don't even have the support of their family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are stepping out on a dream that God gave them, and they've been doing it blindly. And while they've had some success, they don't quite believe that they can step into the arena that they really want to operate in. And so that very first step is examining why they don't feel worthy. And sometimes that can look like doing inner child work and going back to the very first time they didn't feel worthy, the very first time they felt like they couldn't have what they desired. So that's the first part of it.
That's
think
interesting.
also,
So it's deeper than just imposter syndrome, which people are now. It's like you said, sometimes it's going back to childhood. When did you first feel this way?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think, imposter syndrome certainly plays a large part in it, especially with social media. And so you're looking at all of these people Facebook pimping,
right,
and renting
Facebook
out
pimping.
cars.
Yes, it's so right.
Mansions and all of these things. And so you feel like you have to get on their level. Or there's the people who have been in business for 20 years and finally figured it out, and you're in your first year trying to compare yourself to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so imposter syndrome definitely plays a role, but I find that it definitely goes much deeper than that. A lot of people, myself included, I can remember even something as simple as, we all have those stories of asking for McDonald's, and your mom is like, well, do you have McDonald's money?
Right.
And so, kind of being taught that you have to work hard for everything you want. And if it's not a necessity, then you don't get it. I grew up in the projects, and so we definitely had to weigh needs versus wants. But I realized I'm a child of the king. I can have my needs and my wants. I can have all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can have exceedingly and abundantly above even the greatest desire I can think of. And so helping clients connect with that birthright of abundance definitely is a first step. But I think for women specifically, another block is this idea that we're supposed to be nurturers. We're supposed to be generous and giving. That's our nature. And somehow having prosperity means that we're greedy. And that goes against being a nurturer. And again, because I work with purpose driven leaders, many of them are like me. And while I do love money, I'm not a materialistic person. And there's nothing wrong with it if you are. Again, we can have nice things if that's what we desire. I love experiences. I love being able to serve on a massive scale. And so some of the dreams I have for my business, I absolutely plan to open up a healers center where healers can come and be recharged, almost like a year-long retreat center. I plan on opening a school. But how can I do that if I can't even buy a plane ticket to go speak across the country?
Right.
And so, I think a lot of women deal with this idea that they're supposed to be soft and they're supposed to not have these desires for greatness because that's a man's role. But if you really think about it, the way that they desire to serve, they need money. And, for me, money is just access. Money is just energy. Money helps us serve.
It's a tool.
Absolutely. A lot of people think that money changes you. Absolutely not right. Money reveals you. And so whatever you have inside of you, the more money you have, that's just going to show up. And so getting clients to recognize that you don't have to change just because you have more money. Now you get to do more of that heart-centered work that you yearn to do in the first place.
I think that's so powerful. And it reminded me of something that happened to me recently, going back a little bit to what you said about growing up with the projects and wants versus needs. I think too, sometimes we can get into, sometimes we've been raised with this mentality of you have enough money. Like if you have this great job and you you're like, oh, I'm trying to get a raise, or right? I have family, family stuff, but it's just like, oh, you have enough. Or even if they're talking about, I don't know, a basketball player or a hip hop artist, and they open this business site. Well, he has enough money. What does that even? I don't even understand. And who are you to judge if they have enough money? Anyway, I think that mentality can get ingrained in us. So an example for me that happened recently, I was invited to do a speaking engagement. And at first, the person I was talking to didn't mention any kind of honorarium or anything. So I was thinking, okay, they're going to get to it. They never said anything. So I had to push myself to not push myself, but say, okay, you have to mention this and ask about it. They said they're going to work on it. Fine. They came back with an amount. I had a different amount in mind that was just Benir $500 more. So not a lot. And my first instinct was, oh, okay, well, that's enough what they offer. Then I thought, no, ask for what you really wanted. They have to say no. What is it? Yes, no, or renegotiate, right? Or actually, I get to say yes, no, or renegotiate. And I asked for that additional, and they said that was fine. Now, of course, right away, I was like, maybe I should have asked for more. And I thought, you know what? No, this is what I wanted. And I pushed myself to ask for what I wanted. So I just wanted to mention that as an example of getting into this mentality of right away. My first trigger was, oh, okay, well, that's enough. Like already I'm going to settle for whatever that amount is, as opposed to really pushing yourself to ask for what you want. So that's what your great inspiration just brought out of me or resonated with me and made me think of.
Absolutely. And that idea of just enough, I find that really is perpetuated in the spiritual community. We have so many coaches that I work with have this poverty consciousness that they feel like they have to be broke to effectively serve.
Right. Especially the woo-woo people. It's like you can be woo-woo and make money. Yeah.
And I'm just like, while I do understand, again, I am not a material person. I'm not quite a minimalist because I like my nice things, but there's a lot of things that just don't matter to me. And so I do get it, not being attached to items, but you definitely do not have to be broke to serve. And let's be real. How can you really serve when you're broke? Right. The Bible tells us that if we see our fellow man hungry, not to tell him, be fed, my brother, but to feed him. But how can you feed him when you can't feed yourself because you have just enough?
That's right. Operating in a space of abundance. That's right.
Absolutely.
So speaking about God and spirituality, how would you say that our relationship, if we have one with a higher power, plays into our relationship with money?
It's a direct reflection. Our relationship with everything really is a reflection of our relationship with ourselves. And so, one thing that I often teach is that our relationship with God is a reflection of our relationship with ourselves. And, so if we have trouble seeing God as a loving God, a compassionate God, then a lot of times we are not loving and compassionate towards ourselves. If we see God, when I was younger, I saw God as this old man in the sky with a chalkboard. And every time I messed up, he wrote a tally mark. And whenever I repented, he erased it. And then the tally started as soon as I sinned again. And because of that, it was really hard for me to see, I had this fear-based relationship with God, and it was really hard for me to see God as compassionate. And so I had a fear-based relationship with myself. I was always pushing myself to be great, but then I didn't celebrate my wins. If I messed up, I didn't really have that compassion towards myself. It was always, well, you should have done this. And so when my relationship with God began to change and I realized that God is my protector, God wants the best for me and supports me in every single way in making that best happen, then I was able to start supporting myself in that way. And that reflected in my relationship with money. I think, your relationship with money, your relationship with others, again, it's all a reflection of your relationship with self. One thing that I teach my clients, we look at money in the exact same way we do relationships. And so I look at the healthy relationship wheel and the 6 components needed to have a healthy relationship. So support, communication, accountability, so forth. And often we don't even have that type of relationship with ourselves where we can have open communication and honesty without judgment. So how can we expect to have that with our money?
Sometimes we're our worst critics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I've worked with clients before who use money almost as a bit of a reward system. And so instead of you being able to use your money freely, because let's be real, we work for our money. I don't believe in working hard. I believe in working smart, but whether you're working hard or smart, you work for your dollars. So why shouldn't you be able to enjoy that? But a lot of us, have this mentality of, oh, if you do this, then you can have this. There's always this carrot we're chasing. And while I definitely believe in rewarding yourself and having incentives, sometimes you just have to allow yourself to have what you want because you woke up this morning, because you took a breath this morning, and for some, those purchases can be major things, so if you do this, then you can buy this car. But I've had clients who it's like, well, if you do this particular activity or you get done with this project you're working on, then you can go to the movies, you can get your nails done. Baby, that's self-care.
Right.
And so I think changing that relationship and recognizing that in the same way that you work for money, I believe that your money should be working just as hard or harder for you and should support you in the exact same way you support your money. And so really healing your relationship with self allows you then to develop a healthy relationship with money in the exact same way you would have with a partner.
And in what ways does this affect how we sort of talked about this a little bit, but how we also choose with whom we're going to work as far as clients, and then also how we're going to work with clients? Because I think sometimes people, especially for those of us as entrepreneurs in the service business, don't think about even how our relationship with self, as you said, affects the client, just like relationships, partners, right? Romantic relationships. It affects the kind of partners that you choose. You keep choosing the same, you think they're a bad person, but really it's the person you just keep choosing over and over again. So do you work with your clients at all about helping them choose the best clients for them and for their businesses?
Absolutely. That's one of the first assignments we do. I have them create their client avatar,
Mm-hmm.
and I work a little differently. So I look not only at the demographics of your client, because yes, that is important, especially when you're looking at targeting and ad spend, but I more so look at the psychology of your client, the energy of your client. Who do you desire? You're spending more time with them sometimes than you're spending with your family. So
Right.
who do you really desire to have relationships with, to pour into and have pour back into you? I believe that every single relationship you have in your life, whether it's with a client or it's with your best friend, it has to serve you. And yes, money is an amazing way to serve you. And that's why I believe really charging what that service is worth. I used to say charge what you're worth, but let's be real. You are worth more than diamonds and rubies. There is no dollar amount that anyone could ever pay that would pay your worth. So at least allow them to pay what that service is worth. But, yes, money is a great way to serve you. But if you're working with someone who constantly drains your energy, that doesn't really serve you. And so the money is not enough at that point. And so I have them look at things like, you know, of course, again, we have the demographics. So, how old are they? What is their annual income? What types of positions do they have? What are their pain points? All of these things. But how do they handle conflict? What motivates them? I am a coach that requires my clients to be self motivated.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I absolutely will support you, but we are grown and this is your dream. So I'm not that coach who's about to be in your inbox. Hey, did you get that landing page up? No.
Mm-hmm.
Let me
Mm-hmm.
see the landing page you got up. And if you didn't get it up, I don't really care about your excuses. We can definitely examine why and get to the root of why you're sabotaging yourself. But I don't want to hear your excuses. So if that's what you're looking for, I am not the coach for you. You pay me too much to coddle you. And so for me, it's really important to work with high achieving, successful women who have reached their limit on their own and they're looking for support to get to the next level, but they're willing to do the work. I
That's
absolutely have some clients who are willing to work with people who are just starting and kind of trying to work through the vision and they're scared. That is not my anointing.
mm-hmm. Amen. No, thank you so much for sharing that. That's one of the things I was going to get to too. I think I'm so glad I asked you that question. That was such a great way of laying it out, even better than I could have imagined. But one of the things that my coach had me do was sort of what you said about talking about your avatar, but then also the personality of your ideal client. And those are things that I hadn't really thought of before, and at what stage, as you just mentioned, so perfectly, what stage of their business or whatever you're doing do you want them to be in? Is it
Mm-hmm.
the early stage or is it the superstars? And for a part of my business, I work with early stage people and kind of helping them with the vision, that kind of thing. Before another business, the Girl on Podcast, with getting women booked on podcasts, I want superstars.
Mm-hmm.
Superstars who are trying to get their message out. They know they're superstars. They're tired of being a best kept secret. I had to work through that though with my coach to get to that point. Like, oh, yeah, this isn't the business for women who necessarily are just starting out. Maybe they're just getting their message out, but you have a business, you're a superstar, you're rocking and rolling. And I almost will tell you and everyone listening, at first I sort of felt guilty saying that, like, oh
Mm-hmm.
no, I have to, whatever, whatever that block was, it's gone. She was like, anyway, we talked through it. I won't take you all through my session, but just as you just said, that is not my anointing, not for that business. There are
Mm-hmm.
other places or other people who do that, but this is what I want. So thank you for sharing that. And hopefully that bless somebody's life today, bless somebody's business today. You get to choose
Yes.
the clients you want.
And the thing about that is when you are a lot of people think that excluding or choosing who you work with is exclusionary, and it's
Right.
saying, this is the elite kids club, you can't sit with us,
Right.
pink shirts on Friday. But really what it's saying is, this is who I serve. All
Hmm.
of you who have been looking for someone who understands you, who can help get you to that next level, who has walked in your shoes and knows specifically what you need, I'm here for you. And so just because I'm talking to the ones I'm here for doesn't mean that I'm excluding everyone else. I just support my people. There's people, like you said, who can work with those others. And for me, networking is vital. And so, I try not to simply turn people away. I will absolutely refer you to the best person for you if she's
Exactly.
not me, but when you are really clear about who you work with, it's going to drive your pricing, it drives your product development, it drives every single part of your business, and it takes away that frustration of launching to people who really have no desire for what you have, of having people come to you saying, "Oh, I can't afford that." Oh no, you can afford it because I priced it specifically for you.
Hmm. And that's a great segue into pricing too. That's another thing to think about for everyone listening. This idea, even with blocks around pricing, it's sort of like, well, maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're not catering to the right audience, or not catering, targeting, as you mentioned, outlining your avatar, the right audience. You're trying
Mm-hmm.
to have this price for the wrong client, as opposed to making
Absolutely.
sure both are aligned.
Absolutely right. And, I think there's a few issues that come in with pricing. So, on one hand, yes, people are either charging too much or too little. Because if you charge too much, of course, if that is not where your ideal client is, then certainly they're not going to buy it. But if you charge too little, if you are providing a luxury service and you're charging crackhead prices, what you're communicating is that you are the Dollar General of your industry. Is
Amen.
that really what luxury clients don't want that? And so before every single thing is marketing and copy. And so before they ever speak with you, they see that price and they've already formed a conclusion about the value of your service. So pricing too little definitely is just as dangerous as pricing too much. But I think we also tend to try to sell to people at the wrong part of their process. And so for me, I believe in and teach relationship marketing. And, I created a framework with 4 specific tiers of the relationship. And again, it mirrors a relationship that you would have with someone that you're dating. And it's funny because as I teach this, I realize that a lot of people don't date correctly either. So, I'm
Hmm.
helping
There's that.
save their life in both arenas. But it really mirrors it. And so it's really hard to jump out and try to get someone to buy your high ticket service or product when all you've shared is a hello. And so
Hmm.
knowing what to sell when and having different tiers of products that have, specific price points, but knowing, are we in the crush phase right now? If so, then here's the types of things I need to be selling you. This is the price point I need to stick with. I probably need to save my 6-month one-on-one program until we know each other a little bit better. And maybe you've worked through some of the lower tier programs and have developed that know, and trust factor with me. But I think a lot of people, and I'm sure it's happened to you, they slide in your inbox, "Hey, Elayne, so I
Hmm.
happen to notice that you like building your business. Why don't you buy this $10,000 package I just rolled out?" And
And
it's
you're like,
like,
who are
wait, who are
you?
you?
Right.
Who
Who
are
this? Yeah.
and the thing is, even if it's your ideal client, and same with the mate, you can meet your ideal man, but if he comes at you wrong, you will never know he is your ideal man.
Hmm.
And so, when it comes to pricing, knowing not only that this is the right client, but that you are approaching them and really developing that relationship, so that you're not turning people away who otherwise would be an amazing fit for you.
Now, your framework, is that part of a course, or is that something that we can go through either with
Um,
you or on our own? Is that part of one of your packages?
So it is really part of everything I do. So I do have a course called How to Manifest Your Six-Figure Business. And in that course, I specifically take you through the framework step by step. We go through 10 different types of profit streams you can implement in your business, because most people right now probably only have about 2 or 3 of those. So we go through the specific income streams, how to place those, what types of products you should sell, pricing, all of that. So that probably is going to be the most comprehensive outside of private coaching. But I also do have a membership group where we discuss that as well. So we might, in the membership group, it's a little slower pace because we have people at different levels, but that framework is probably going to be discussed in every single speaking engagement I do, in everything. It's what I breathe, because I really think that's the thing. So people not knowing who they serve, and again, we can look at it like dating. So not being intentional about who you're dating, and then not developing a relationship. So they have a bunch of products or services that are priced all over the place. They happen to see somebody price it at this number and they were like, well, I don't have as much experience as them, so let me charge half that price and slap a number on it. And they jump out there and try to sell it. And so this framework really guides you with understanding not only the psychology of your client at each level of this phase, but again, how to price it and what products you should be providing. So the short answer of your question is any way that you work with me, whether it's in my group program, my course, one-on-one, you're going to learn this.
Excellent. All right. So I will make sure that I get links from you if I don't already have them for the course, the membership group, and of course, we'll talk about your website a little bit later. Now, what has entrepreneurship taught you about yourself as a woman?
Oh, goodness. I think the biggest lesson for me, and this is one that I'm still learning, I think it's been understanding the difference between strength and force. So I'm an Aries, which means I'm a ram. And when there's a wall in front of us, we bulldoze it and we keep going. And that approach does not always work. And so I think that being a woman and an entrepreneur has really taught me to lean into my feminine strength and lead. So wolves lead from the back, and the leaders are observing everyone else in front of them versus having to be out front like, hey, I'm the leader. And so learning to really lean into that feminine submission, but realizing that submission is the power position.
Submission is the power position.
Absolutely. I think before I always felt like, I'm running this, and so I got to do it. I got to go hard. And now I'm like, you know what I'm great at is coaching people to their greatness. What I'm great at is coming up with ways to monetize your brilliance. What I'm great at is helping you really build a profit model that's sustainable and that will allow you to live the lifestyle you desire. What I'm not great at is these graphics, this social media, and being able to recognize I don't have to do everything.
That's right.
I can put other powerful people in place, and I can simply lead from a position of submission. If that's what you're brilliant at, then you go ahead, boo. I don't need to run your department.
That's right. And I love what you said too about you don't have to do everything. So you don't have to ever be great at social media. There are plenty of people you can hire who are. I finally realized that too. Like I got to get support in something. I don't like doing it. Even if it's that, not even just you don't have time. Maybe you don't like doing that. That's just not your thing.
Right. And I think women struggle with asking for help in general.
Well, yeah, that's why support is sexy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what this whole thing is about.
Absolutely. And, that was the biggest game changer for me, realizing that if that's not what I'm great at, or even if it's just not the best use of my time, it's okay to outsource it. And that is both in business and in my personal life. I have some clients, one of the first things we do, so that first month is super intense because we set up their lifestyle the way they desire, and then we get to the money. And so I have clients who have, once they get that lesson, they have hired personal chefs. They've hired housekeepers. They've hired people to do the things that they were always conditioned to believe they had to
Had to
do.
do. Right.
Absolutely.
So in closing, Benir, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Hmm. So without going into a super long story, I'm going to say my heart mom, Cora, who taught me. So I've always been a large woman. And I told you when I was younger, I was very quiet, very demure.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't wear big jewelry. Everything about me was shrunken. And I remember walking into the church one day, and I forget what I was wearing, but I had these really tiny earrings on, and she asked me a question, and my voice at that time was very mousy, and she didn't hear me. And she said, "Honey, what?" She said, "You are too big to come in here acting like this tiny little woman. Open your mouth and own your space." And from that moment, I have made room for my hips. I've made room for my energy. And I have really worked on taking up as much space as I need. And I realized that, when I walk into a room, I absolutely own the space. Before I tried to hide from that. And now I just lean into it. Like, hey, y'all, I'm here.
I love
So
it.
definitely want to thank her for teaching me that it's okay to take all the space I need.
That goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, right? Finally having your
Mm-hmm.
space.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Miss Cora. That's beautiful. Now, what are the ways that we can support you? Tell us your website, any social media that you want to share. And then, as I said, I'll have links to the courses and other things that you have as well, but just so people can hear it.
Absolutely. So the best way to support, you can check out the website, which is benirpierre.com, BENIRPIERRE.com. I'm most active on Facebook. My marketing person is probably side-eyeing me as she listens to this because she's been trying to get me on Instagram forever. But on Facebook, you definitely will have an inside look at my thoughts and a lot of the mindset that goes into prosperity. You also will probably be one of the first to know when I drop new programs or have events coming up. I also have a Facebook group called Manifestation Magnates, Magnates.
Okay.
A lot of people were like, "Oh, did you spell that wrong?" No, honey. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, it might not be the group for you.
Oh, I know that's right.
But it really is a space for powerful women who are doing purpose-driven work, who are at their income ceiling and they want to be highly paid for doing the work of their heart. So if that's you, definitely join us in the Facebook group. We have a lot of fun. We learn a lot, and it definitely is an encouraging and inspirational space to really support you in getting to that next level. And then if you want to work with me, I encourage you to get on the phone with me. Of course, I have courses and membership groups, but I don't believe in selling this blanket solution. And so I want to speak to you directly. And so you can book a call with me at bit.ly/Benir Pierre, BENIRPIERRE. And I look forward to speaking with you.
Excellent. Benir, thank you for this inspiring conversation. That was so much fun and just really inspirational, as I said, inspiring, but also informational. A lot of great tips. I wrote a long page of notes here. So that was good. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
I'm going to say just do it. Thank you, Nike. Just do it. So often we have these dreams that we want to achieve, but for whatever reason, we've been told that we can't, or that we have to wait until we have certain education certificates, or there's this, great goal we're reaching towards before we're able to finally step into our greatness. I encourage you today to just do it, and then something tomorrow, and every single day to move you towards that vision.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Benir as much as I did. To find out more about her programs, about her mastermind or her membership group, all the great stuff that she has going on, just go to supportissexypodcast.com. Go to that search icon at the top and just type in Benir, Benir. Her show notes page will pop up with the links and the resources that we talked about in this episode. Supportissexypodcast.com and just search Benir. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Again, if it's the beginning of the week, happy Monday. But whenever you're listening to this, I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope it sets you off on a great path for the rest of your day, the rest of your week. All right. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate you. And until we chat again next time, always remember that you deserve support. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.